Okay, good morning, everybody. Glad you could join us for Perception and Self-Awareness, and hope you're having a great week and enjoying the hot weather as it may be, and are getting psyched up for the upcoming weekend. So first off, I want to thank NAFA and Mark Mail for presenting this. I really appreciate the partnership with NAFA. They do a great job offering various services to their members, and so glad to have you all here aboard this morning. So let's get right into this today. Let's talk about the agenda. Now, perception and self-awareness to me are such an enormous aspect of being successful in building and growing relationships with people. And in sales, it really gets kind of lost in the shuffle. You know, people talk about the requisite core competencies you need to be effective in sales. Sometimes we forget about perception and self-awareness, when arguably it can be the most important factor. One of the reasons when you talk about perception is because a lot of the way salespeople behave towards prospects, towards their clients, is based on the perception they have of themselves and the perception they think clients and prospects have of them. And it can really alter their level of assertiveness, the kinds of questions they're willing to ask, and the kinds of challenges they're willing to take on. So it's big. And as far as self-awareness is such a huge aspect of communication because, you know, we're all taught to mirror people's communication style, but with self-awareness, how you're responding to people, your body language, your ability to listen, your word choice, your tone, those are all critical elements of communication related to self-awareness. So I think you'll really enjoy this today. I think you'll get a lot out of it. And so as you can see, that's the objectives, but it's really a great topic. So I want to just briefly talk about sales emotional intelligence. And what's interesting is, for those of you who aren't familiar with emotional intelligence, I'm going to just quickly cover the aspects. The ones we're going to cover today is particularly self-awareness. That's the first aspect of emotional intelligence. But the other aspects, one of them is self-control. And self-control is related to triggers. And usually you hear the word triggers when you're talking about mental health or going to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So it's kind of one of those words that has a stigma around it. But we get triggered every day by people. And triggers are not necessarily things that just make you angry or frustrated. Triggers can be things, to put it simply, that take you off your game, distract you, and put your mind in a different place. You know, an example, I know salespeople always joke about when prospects respond with, you know, that's the way we've always done it, or, you know, we're all set right now, and different things, and how people respond to your efforts to try to get people interested in your product and service. And that can be very frustrating, and we tend to get irritated. And so sales emotional intelligence, first, self-awareness, second, self-control. Third is motivation. And motivation is really important because it's not just your ability to know how to motivate yourself when things aren't going well, such as what's going on with COVID right now, but it's also your ability to motivate and influence others, which is an enormous aspect of being successful in sales and leadership for that matter. The fourth is empathy, and not empathy as a forced act, to check a box. I call it effortless empathy. And effortless empathy is when you're talking to someone and you're looking for opportunities genuinely to be empathetic to them. One of the things that happens when you're talking to a prospect is that prospect has a lot of pressure on them. They might be fearful of making a wrong decision. They might have dealt with vendors like you in the past that misrepresented themselves or disappointed them. So empathy is giving people the emotions and feelings that they deserve based on those past experiences. And again, not just checking off a box and saying you did it. And the fifth is social skills. So look, I wanted to give you that foundation of sales emotional intelligence because it's really what I focus on in sales training, because whether you're objecting or whether you're overcoming objections, whether you're closing, whether you're asking the right questions, whatever sales core competency there is, it always comes down to those aspects of emotional intelligence. So let's talk about perception. And I've got a great example for all of you today with perception. We're in an era now, obviously, where virtual presentations are obviously quite prevalent. They were somewhat in the past, but Most of us in sales prefer in-person interactions because that's why one of the main reasons we like the business is the ability to interact with other human beings. And we know with COVID, one of the consequences of COVID is we've lost a lot of that human interaction element, and we rely on virtual presentations and webinars and things like this. So a great way I always like to describe perception is, think of your attitude when you come to a webinar like this today. And for those of you, if this is your first webinar with me, think about what you're used to when you are getting presented to virtually or a webinar. Your perception from my experience is, oh, here we go, another sales training, another person telling me what to do, another person telling me things I already know. It's going to be boring. I just have to stare at a screen for 30 minutes. These are very common perceptions when you interact with people virtually, and people kind of have a negative mindset about it. And so one of the key things in perception, and this is the first takeaway I want you to walk away with today. When you are presenting to someone virtually, or even in person for that matter, think about the perceptions they may have when you walk in the door, when you start the presentation. If you don't address those perceptions, then they're going to linger and they're going to distract the person, at least in the first few minutes of the presentation, until you prove them wrong. And it doesn't matter if their perceptions are justified or not. You know the expression, perception is reality. So if someone is feeling like this presentation, when you start this webinar today, if you feel like it's going to be boring, then I've got to say something to you to maybe shift your mindset a little bit so you don't think it's boring. And here are the three things I typically tell people in the beginning of the presentation. And I didn't do it right off the bat today because I wanted to talk about it correlating with this. So typically my presentations are very interactive. Be prepared to contribute, prepared to volunteer. I will call on you. And I say that in the beginning because I want people to know it's important to be paying attention and deciding what they want to get out of this. The second thing I'll say is, don't worry about writing down notes. You can be fully present and be able to ask questions and participate, because I'll send you the PowerPoint deck after the fact and it'll have all the notes you need. And third, there's so much that people need to worry about and learn about that I say focus on habit change, focus on identifying the things in this presentation that you can apply in small increments, because once you look at all those notes, it's a little overwhelming. So bottom line, guys, is my assumption in a lot of cases is that people are expecting to be bored, expecting to be talked down to. So when I present longer workshops, in-person workshops, the messages I give right off the bat is, this isn't going to be what you think it's going to be, because I don't want that done to me, so I won't do that to you. Now, mindset is really big, right? So one of the things to build on what I was just saying is, a lot of times when you're training salespeople, especially if they're salespeople that have been doing it for 10 or 20 years, there's a mindset and an attitude of like, I already know this. And so what my hope is when I train people from a perception point of view is that you'll apply old tools with new eyes, you'll embrace the change, and you'll learn habit replacement. But these 5 parts of the brain, these are the mindsets that you need to have as a salesperson to be effective. Growth mindset, which means even if you don't understand how to do something yet, it's not too late to learn it and figure it out. Curiosity mindset is a mindset of, hey, I don't know everything already. You can always learn new things. Self-confident mindset is believe that you have the skills and knowledge and experience and mentorship, as it may be, to execute what you want to do. That's a new practice. Assertive mindset, right? The assertive mindset is that when someone's pushing back on you, you will have the confidence to be able to respond to that, not aggressively, but assertively, so you can find out answers quicker and more clear answers. And then, as I said, habit replacement. So these are the mindsets that make an effective salesperson. And when I talk about self-awareness, I'm asking you right now, do you think you have those 5 mindsets? because those are the ones that are going to take you to a different level. You may be the most successful salesperson around, but those are going to be the ones that elevate your performance. Not that you have to work harder, but allow you to work smarter. And one final thought before I go to the next slide is what I want you to take away also from this slide is growth and curiosity, specifically those two mindsets. Those are the mindsets you want your prospects and customers to have. Because when a prospect or customer says, I'm all set, or I don't think I need that, that is not a curiosity mindset. They already have their mind made up before perhaps you've even opened your mouth. And so that's why if you want your prospects and customers to have a growth and curiosity mindset, it's important you drink that Kool-Aid and you do it as well when you're dealing with the customers and prospects. So let's talk about proving trust, right? I wish there was a secret formula where you could walk in and start a new relationship with someone and you could say the right things to prove trust. And it just doesn't happen that way. We know that most of the time, if not all of the time, the way you establish trust with someone, it takes time. However, I'm going to teach you a few things right now on ways you can actually facilitate that trust building a lot quicker and earlier than perhaps you're used to. So what I want you to think about a little bit here is think about how a salesperson's role has changed. When you walk in the door, there's a good chance that your prospect knows a ton about you and your product before you've even walked in the door, right? We know they've Googled it. They can look for reviews online. They can look at your LinkedIn profile. They can look at, best practices when buying or purchasing your product or service. They might be so well equipped with information before you walk in the door. And the role of an educator, which has been such a prominent role for a salesperson, has changed now. And when you hear or read articles or blogs about how a salesperson's role has changed, what they're talking about is you still need to be an educator, but you really need most of all to know how to forge and build relationships. And so the way you do that, right, is you gauge their knowledge and experience level. So one of the things I like to do at the beginning of a presentation is I like to understand what people's fears are in the beginning. So I might ask a question about, what's your ideal buying experience? And I know that might sound corny just out of left field and random, but what I'm trying to get at, even if you don't like that exact phraseology, what I'm trying to get at is I want to understand if you're purchasing the services of a financial advisor, wealth manager, insurance salesperson, something like that, what is your experience with this? Have you purchased this in the past? What worked? What didn't work? What was your relationship with your existing vendor and your existing salesperson? These are all things that are swimming around in the person's head that they have as baggage. And if they've had a bad experience with a product, with a service, with a company, with a salesperson, those are going to be all critical factors in how you're going to be able to build a relationship with this person. So when it comes to proving trust, the first takeaway on this is I want you to think about questions you can ask to learn about the individual so they're self-aware of what they're coming to the table with, what past experiences they're coming to the table with, so you know what you're up against. Because it's not just the competition you're up against their past experiences as well and how they perceived those past experiences and how they're applying them to you. So here's why people act the way they do. And you guys can read, so I'm not going to read this for you, but what I want you to notice is before you start talking to a human being, personally or professionally, you have to understand that these are all the things that could be swimming around in their head that could impact their willingness to be motivated or influenced. And what you don't see on here is family culture, because many of us, our personalities, our confidence, our strengths, our fear are based around the family culture we grew up in. So again, when you're trying to build trust with someone, and let me just address one of these, loyalty. So let's talk about loyalty. Very often, you might deal with a prospect who wants to change. They're not totally happy with their vendor or their service provider, but they're loyal and they feel bad. So what do you do when you formed a relationship with someone you know you could deliver a better product or service, But they're like, yeah, you're probably right, but I don't know. I've been with this person for X amount of years and I just feel bad. This is a big thing. This is where sales emotional intelligence comes in, because how do you respond? And I want to take a minute to open it up to the group. Can anybody tell me if they have a great answer where if you're feeling like, or where the person says that to you and there's an answer for, yeah, I feel bad, I don't want to leave. What's your best answer for that? Does anybody have a good answer for that? Okay, you guys are being shy. Well, I'll tell you what. Hope. Hold on, Hope. Hope, go ahead, speak.
I usually say something like, a lot of my clients actually tell me the same thing. Question, if perhaps I gave you an idea to formulate, would you consider it?
So I really like that. I think Hope's absolutely on the right track. And building on what Hope said, one of the things I say to people when they say that is I say, well, look, here's the question. If this is someone you formed a great relationship with and you really like, and you went to them and you said that you think you had a better opportunity for yourself personally, for your family, for your company, whatever it may be, and you were able to articulate why it was a better opportunity, if that person would want you to not take advantage of the opportunity, that's not a person that you necessarily want as a friend in the first place. Because if you think you're doing someone a favor by staying with them, by taking a less adequate service or product, so I guess what I'm trying to say is you need to help this person. What Hope's talking about is you need to help this person articulate to the service provider why they want to leave and why it would be in their best interest, and kind of help them with a talk track through that. And I really mean that. It's no different than having a person you're talking to, your prospect, who has other decision makers, and you have to prepare your prospect to present your selling points to other decision makers. It's the same vein. But the point is, loyalty can be a very difficult thing to overcome. And I actually have a template that I can send. If anybody after this is over wants to email me, I'll send you a little talk track template on loyalty and how to get people to overcome that. Because I know in the wealth management financial advisor space, people don't always change easily, and sometimes they want to change, but there is that pull of loyalty. I do know that. All right. So let's go before you even walk in the door. Okay, so let's talk about this. So these are all the perceptions you have to overcome. You're in sales. So the second people realize you're a salesperson, they make assumptions about you as a salesperson. Talk about, hold on, someone has a question. Let me just see. Oh, I lost it. Sorry, I'll get to you at the end. I'm sorry, I lost that question. Second thing is the company and the product. What kind of preconceived notions or perceptions do they have of the company or product? What assumptions do they have about your industry? What do they think about insurance, financial, wealth management, or whatever other industry you're in? What preconceived notions do they have about that? I already talked about number 4 earlier. How about number 5? How you present yourself, your appearance. A lot of people don't naturally smile. And forgive the French, but we call that resting bitch face in some cases. Right or wrong, the fact of the matter is, if you're not a natural smiler, it's going to affect people's first impression of you and immediate perception of you. And I get asked all the time, can you teach people how to more naturally smile? And you can. Your facial muscles are like any other muscles in your body that if you exercise them, it can be an easier thing to naturally smile. But we all know, you think of the word charisma, we all know that when you present yourself, your appearance, your confidence, your voice, your tone, it all comes out and people will make snap judgments right away. So what I want you to think about right now on the heels of the last question I asked is, if people think immediately, here comes another salesperson, that's what's going in their mind and they're expecting that salesperson to do a certain thing, how do you counter that? How would you, if you were 100% sure you were about to begin an interaction with someone and you know they had negative thoughts on salespeople in general and they had a lot of assumptions, what would you do? Well, here's what it comes down to, right? Here are the things people assume about salespeople. All right, here's some of the things people assume about salespeople. And so the question is, how do you overcome that? Okay? Well, I overcome it by telling a very brief story or anecdote. Okay, and I'm going to tell you exactly an example of what I say, and you can determine whether you like it or don't like it. But to me, this is something that has zero downside, because if the person doesn't have any preconceived notions of salespeople, it doesn't hurt you. If anything, it shares your core values with them. And if they do, it addresses them right out of the gate. So I might say something like, hey, before we get started, there's a few things I want to share with you today. One of them is I don't like wasting time. I don't like when people waste my time, and I won't waste your time because I know time is probably the most valuable commodity we have these days. Number two, I don't like salespeople. I didn't get in this business to be a salesperson because salespeople are pushy and aggressive. I like this business because I like providing solutions to people. And if I can find a solution, if I'm a good fit for you, great. And if I'm not, I'll walk away. And the third thing is integrity is a core value for me. I was raised by my parents to treat people with respect, be honest, and follow through on what I say I'm going to do. So I just want you to know before we get into this presentation, that's what you have with me. And so my approach there, guys, is three different things. Again, one, address the elephants in the room of what people may be thinking. And again, if they weren't thinking it, okay, they got to know something about me. And when you talk about building trust, not only are you addressing potential preconceived notions of salespeople, but you're also forging trust, because if the three things I said resonate with the prospect, they're going to be like, oh, cool. This person's not going to waste my time. They're not going to be dishonest, and they're not going to be pushy and aggressive. Now, I'm not proposing that they're going to believe everything you say right on the spot. Your actions still need to match your words, but at least you're putting it out there that those are important things to you. So when I talk about storytelling, I always tell people it scares people sometimes, because a lot of people, when they hear the word story, they picture sitting on their grandmother or grandfather's lap, you know, having someone sell this long-winded story that never ends. Stories can be 20 seconds. Stories can be anecdotes. There's different kinds of stories. But at the end of the day, this is a really powerful way to build trust and really address potential fears with a prospect. Now, let's talk about self-reflection for a minute. I want you to reflect back on sales situations where maybe you weren't quite on the same wavelength as the person you were selling to. And see, what happens a lot of situations is when we're unable to close deals, or when we're unable to solidify relationships, it often comes down to our excuse is it was price, it was loyalty, it was whatever. And I think the most effective salespeople really get to the root cause of why the deal didn't happen. And if you take a surface level excuse because it's convenient and it's easy to make yourself feel better, you're losing, right? And so it's so important when deals happen or when deals don't happen to really ascertain why the real reason it didn't happen. And I have to tell you all, in my experience working with individuals and sales teams all over the country, it's often not being on the same wavelength as the person you talk to. And one of the points I want to make here that's really critical is when you have a short window of time to talk to someone. Let's say someone says, Hope, I'll give you 30 minutes to talk. And Hope's like, all right, I got 30 minutes. I better get everything out because they told me I have only 30 minutes. Think about relationships. Take a step back for a moment. If you're meeting someone for the first time, let's say it's not a business situation. You just happen to meet someone. It could be at a networking event. It could be just you're meeting new friends at a party or something like this. Think about it. You keep talking to someone or they keep talking to you because they like you and they see value in you. So when people say you have only 30 minutes, you've got a critical decision to make. And this is where self-awareness comes in. You can either say, all right, I got 30 minutes to sink or swim. I better get it all out. Or you can say, I got to stick to my process too, though, because to me, the reason why people do business with me is because of me. It's because they like working with me. They trust me. They like my personality. My values resonate with them. So I'm going to make sure in that 30 minutes, I allocate time still to build a relationship and build rapport. Because you know what? If they only have 30 minutes today, but they genuinely like me and think they could envision themselves doing business with me, then they'll continue the conversation. They might say there's only 30 minutes for this initial conversation, but that doesn't mean they won't continue it if they see value. And see, the problem is, if you regurgitate everything in the 30 minutes and give them everything they need to know, then there's no reason for them to continue the conversation because you've already answered all their questions and there'll be no sense of curiosity. So I really am encouraging you to look in the mirror, and one of the areas I can coach you on, or I do coach people on, I should say, is how to evaluate why your deals are happening and why your deals are not happening. And by the way, it's just as important to evaluate why your deals are happening. People always think, well, we just need to focus on the negative. No. When I get a new client, I will ask them, hey, listen, what made you feel comfortable using my services? Because I want to know, was it something I said? Was there a part of my service or product offering? And guess what? There's enough reasons as salespeople we have to lose our confidence because there's so much rejection that goes with this job. So if you can get some reinforcement of the things you're doing well, that's critical. So looking in the mirror is not just to understand why things aren't working out, it's also asking the question to clients why they are. Now, these are the primary factors that contribute to perception. And I'm going to just talk about some brief things in each category, okay? One of them is, in the first category, is the body language. And the reason why I want to hone in on body language is because body language actually has 5 components. It's the body language you're modeling. It's your ability to interpret, read, and respond to other people's body language. And this is the biggest of all. It's your ability to confirm what you think their body language means is accurate. So when you are doing a presentation, if you see someone yawning during your presentation, you have some decisions to make. You can conclude that you're boring and you need to change things up, or you could get some clarity on what's really going on. And again, that's where that assertive mindset comes in, because as a salesperson, if you're timid and you see someone yawning during a presentation, you immediately start to lose your confidence. Oh, I'm being boring. They could just not have slept well last night and they're tired. But if you don't get clarity on what you perceive as someone else's body language, you could really go down a rabbit hole. Level 2. I said this before, and I can't tell you how important this is in building relationships and influencing prospects. Past experiences with you or others. People remember negative experiences. They could have had 10 interactions with salespeople. 9 have been positive, 1 have been negative, but it'll be that negative that sticks with them. And I refer to this as the shoe bomber effect. And the shoe bomber effect is, guy goes into an airport, has a bomb in his shoe, millions of flights in the history of the world, it's happened one time. And now the overreaction to that is we're taking off shoes all the time in airports. So that negative experience sticks with people. Part of your job as a salesperson is to uncover what that, if there was negative experiences in the past, and if so, what they were. And as a third piece, how you'll prevent that and how you'll be different. That's a huge aspect to overcome perception. And then level 3, this is so big, right? Motivational state and mood. And what's really big about that is it's so much of sales in this regard, on this level 3, can be luck, because when you encounter a prospect or a customer, you have no idea their mood that day, what else is going on in their life. You have no idea their motivational state. Maybe their boss they came out of a meeting with their boss and their boss just read them the riot act. There's so many wild cards and variables that can be in play. But my point in bringing this up is, again, motivational state, mood, you have to have the ability to read that, address it, and overcome it, because that is a huge factor in how people may perceive you. It could have nothing to do with you. It could be their motivational state or mood, but that's why The mindsets I talked about, that curiosity and that assertiveness, are huge in addressing those challenges. Okay. So just a couple of final thoughts before we wrap up today. Evaluation. So look, it's really important for you to ascertain, for you to look in the mirror and know what you're doing well and not doing well. It's really important, because you can't improve as a salesperson unless you really can understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. And part of the challenge is that you have to care, you have to want to know. And a lot of times what I find with salespeople is, if they're hitting their quota or exceeding their quota, their focus on improvement goes down, a sense of complacency can develop. Again, it's not a work harder, it's a work smarter. So want to evaluate the areas that you can improve in. We all have them. It's okay to be vulnerable, but that's really important. From an active learning, I want to ask you guys, as we finish this today, write down, as you finish this webinar today, write down the things that you can apply, that you can model. If it's a question you're going to ask, if it's a mindset you want to have. And what I mean by that is, if you agree with some of the mindset comments I've made, if you're like, yeah, I need to remember that, I need to do that, how are you going to do it? It's one thing to say you need to remember it and do it, but how are you going to make it happen? Are you going to put a little note in your portfolio to look down during a presentation and remind yourself? You need to have a cue. That's how habits change, is to have a cue. So that's really important, that whatever you're writing down that you want to implement, you also have to learn how you're going to implement, because habits don't form overnight. Invest in yourself, invest in getting better in the self-assessment evaluation process, and learning about emotional intelligence in sales. Real quick wrap up. These are some areas we help companies and individuals. If you want to learn more, I'll reach out to you and send a copy of the presentation today, but these are some areas we help. August 12th, NAFA is putting on another workshop that I'm hosting on prospecting for opportunities. So you can go to the website and register for that. It'll take you to the NAFA link. And otherwise, thank you for attending, and thank you for NAFA for holding this presentation. And look forward to seeing you all at a future presentation.